let's talk about dementia. Dementia is extremely common. You will definitely see it at some point, whether it's in clinical or if you work in a hospital, if you work in long-term care. Our population is getting older, and along with that come all the comorbidities that come with getting older, and one of the most common things that we see is dementia. It is the #1 diagnosis that we see in long-term care. It is defined as the permanent and progressive loss of the ability to think and remember. So this is not the same thing as just being forgetful. A lot of people are forgetful, but this is the actual erasing of that memory, so that memory can never be found again. So if you do an autopsy of somebody that has got dementia, you will see that they actually have holes inside of their brain. So they don't have the ability to remember. The #1 form of dementia is Alzheimer's disease. Counts for about 60% of the dementia that we see. So this is not called Alzheimer's disease, which I've heard a lot of people say. It is Alzheimer's disease, and it consists of plaques and tangles inside of the brain that leads to this progressive and permanent memory loss. So dementia in all forms is considered terminal, right? It's just going to keep getting worse until the person passes away. Other types of dementia that are not as common, there's Lewy body dementia, which is just a buildup of Lewy body proteins inside the brain. There's vascular dementia, which has to do with the blood vessels that supply blood to the brain. So think about, if your vessels to your heart are damaged by atherosclerosis, it puts you at higher risk for heart disease. So this just would put you at higher risk for dementia. And then there's frontotemporal dementia, which has to do with the frontal lobe, and that is usually due to trauma of some kind. So there's a lot of reasons why dementia happens, and most of them we don't know. There's a hereditary component, so if there's a lot of Alzheimer's disease in a family, it puts you at higher risk for developing it later on in life. There's also, if somebody's had a lot of trauma to their brain, that's going to put them at a higher risk. So somebody like football players or athletes that have had repeated trauma to their head. And then there's some studies that show that high blood pressure may lead to it. Pollution, high polluted areas seem to have higher incidences of Alzheimer's disease. But for a lot of people, we just don't know. We know that the incidence increases with age, but it is not considered to be a normal part of aging. It's not expected that, if you get old, eventually you'll get dementia. It's not expected. But it is the 6th leading cause of death in the U.S. So it's, really, really common. A lot of times people with dementia will die from something else first, like pneumonia or pressure ulcers, things that are related to the diagnosis of dementia. But if they don't die from something like that first, they will actually just die from the dementia itself. So we talked about the different types: vascular, frontotemporal, Lewy body. They do have some different symptoms with them. Like with Lewy body, you may see some more bizarre behaviors or jerky movements. With frontotemporal, sometimes you see behavior changes more than with the others, personality changes, because it has to do with that frontal lobe. Some signs of dementia. The #1 sign, of course, is that memory loss, which is the amnesia. So these are the 4 A's that kind of help you remember. So amnesia is memory loss. Aphasia, we've talked about before. That is trouble with speaking and comprehending speech. Agnosia, I always think of agnosia like think of your nose, so it has to do with your senses, losing your senses. So your sense of smell, your sense of taste, touch, vision, you might start to see hallucinating. All of your senses are off. And then apraxia is actually just forgetting the steps and how to do something. So maybe I know I need to brush my teeth, but I can't remember how I need to start that process. And that's why with dementia, and some of the other videos that you'll watch, you'll see we do hand over hand a lot of times to help them remember oh, okay, this is how I pick up a spoon, this is how I put it in the soup, and this is how I bring it to my mouth. And then they'll start being able to do it themselves again. But it's just forgetting the steps and how to do something. When somebody has dementia, they will have what we call behaviors. They can be very taxing on the person that is taking care of that person with dementia, and very hard to understand sometimes. Not every person's going to have the same behaviors. You kind of will see if you go into these long-term care facilities, sometimes people have behavior charts for their particular behavior, and it's just a way for us to track, if it's getting better or worse. So these are just some of the ones that you will see. Repetition is just doing the same thing over and over and over again. Like we had a gentleman that liked to pull tissues out of a tissue box over, and then you put them back in, he'd pull them out again and again and again and again. So it's just doing the same thing over and over and over again. Sometimes it just means that person's bored and needs some other distraction. Most of the time it's not harmful, but if it's something like picking at their skin, scratching themselves, it could be harmful. Sundowning is behavior changes that we see when the sun goes down. So around 6, 7, 8 o'clock at night, you'll see all these behaviors increase. So then things that might be helpful if somebody is sundowning is getting them distracted during that time, getting them involved in an activity, not having them sitting right in front of a window as the sun is going down, so that they see the sun going down. Try to get them over that hump so that they can avoid that period of time where they're getting really agitated and anxious. But agitation is just a normal human emotion. You just may see more of it if the person has dementia. Kind of like their filter is gone, so they can become more verbal and aggressive. If you just really need to find the source of that agitation. Sometimes it might be something that doesn't even make sense to you, something that triggered that agitation, but it doesn't matter if it makes sense to you. We just need to figure out what is triggering them and try to remove them from that situation or distract them from it. Sometimes you can't find the source of their agitation and they don't know why they're agitated. So you just need to try different things, get them something to eat. Maybe they're hungry, or maybe they're bored, or maybe somebody's irritating them. Just keep working on it until you can get them into a better place. Pacing is just walking back and forth, right? It's just like anybody else pacing. And some of that has to do with agitation. If you see that, it might be a sign that they're getting agitated. Inappropriate sexual behaviors. This can be really difficult for families to understand. But we're all sexual beings, and we have kind of a filter on us to help us be appropriate in situations. But like I said, with dementia, sometimes that filter's gone. So if they have an urge to do something, they will do it, whether it's with themselves or with somebody else. This can be difficult for families, like, if that person is still married, but they're in a long-term care facility, you want to be appropriate, you want them to have some freedom, but if they have dementia, they don't always have the ability to make the best choices. So sometimes we have to remove them from those situations. If they're being inappropriate with somebody else, then we have to, distract them, get them involved in something else. Wandering can be dangerous if it happens in a place where they can wander into, an area that they're going to get hurt, like a freezer or outside. Then they can start wandering down the street and get hit by traffic or get lost. So if we have somebody who is a wanderer, we may put them in a locked unit just for their own safety so that they have a safe place to wander and they're not going to end up getting hurt. Because something you have to remember is sometimes people with dementia don't look like they have dementia. Especially if they have early onset dementia. They could be in their 50s and 60s and look perfectly healthy, be well dressed. So you could let them out the door. You might not think anything of it, but if they have dementia and they're wandering, they're going to get themselves into trouble. So they might need to have a safe place to do that. Delusions are false beliefs. Don't get this confused with hallucinations, which has to do with your senses. So a delusion might be, I believe that I am the Queen of England. okay, and you are my subjects. You're probably not going to convince that person otherwise, and it's going to be very fruitless and frustrating for you and for them. So you just need to make sure that they're safe and they're not doing anything that's inappropriate or harmful. Okay, so delusions are not something that we're necessarily going to change. A hallucination has to do with your senses. So you can have a visual hallucination where you see something that's not there, an auditory hallucination where you hear something that's not there, or you might have a combination of different ones. Sometimes they're harmless, like you seeing a kitty cat in the hallway, and sometimes they can be very scary. So if you have somebody who's having scary hallucinations, we want to try to distract them from that. If they see something really scary in a room, take them out of that room. Something that's not helpful is just telling them, oh, it's not real. Because what they see is real to them. Okay? Rummaging is going through other people's things, stealing things, hoarding things. That's pretty common. You might go in their drawer and see they have 10,000 Splenda packets because they take them every time they go to the dining room. That's difficult for families to understand too. They are like, oh, my mother would never steal. But your mother has dementia now, so this is, we're dealing with a different person really. And it's not something that they're doing to be bad or, mean. It's just, they see something, they want it, and they're going to take it. So we want to make sure that, they're not hoarding things that are going to be harmful for them, like old food. And when you take those things out of their room, you might not want to do it right in front of them or chastise them for it, because it's just going to make them upset. And in catastrophic behaviors, I don't like to compare these adults to children, but think about a toddler having a temper tantrum. This is similar. It's an extreme reaction to something maybe that's very small. Like maybe they don't want to take a bath, so they have an absolute breakdown. Sometimes you don't know why they're having this catastrophic reaction, but if you know the reason why, try to distract them from it, get their mind on something else, or comfort them so that they're not feeling so stressed out. Some really good videos. This one is posted for you guys to watch. Make sure that you take a look at it. Helps you to learn how to deal with some of these behaviors, because you can't alter their behavior. You can't make them change the way they're acting, but you can change the way that you're acting. And validation therapy is the term that we use that just means I'm validating their reality. I'm acknowledging that this is their reality, and I'm not trying to bring them back to my reality. So something we used to do when I was a young nurse was called reality orientation. Like, no, Mr. Smith, you're in the hospital. No, your mother died 20 years ago. We found that those things are really not helpful, and it really only serves to stress that person out more and make them more agitated, and it's going to make them not trust you. So you want to acknowledge their reality, meet them where they are, okay? So we'll give you some examples of that in class, hopefully help you in some of those situations that you're going to be finding yourself in, so that you don't make it more stressful for yourself and for them, and to build some rapport so that they trust you. Okay, so make sure that you check out those videos.